Don't go anywhere. Hit that subscribe button. Tap the notification bell and be the first to know when we drop a new video. Like and share with your fellow American patriots who love this country. And if you haven't even an American patriot, you are someone who believe and love freedom, love democracy, truth, and don't like corruption, hit the subscription button. If you know Donald Trump and understand Donald Trump, you know that Donald Trump is a straight racist. Donald Trump don't hide it. That's how it is. So you have some people, they are black. You know, if you live in Florida, especially South Florida or anywhere, you will meet people. And they're from a country called Dominican Republic that is border with Haiti. And these people have shown time and time again that they're hate them own self. So when you ask them their race, they will tell you that they are Dominican. And you tell them that there's no race named Dominican, and they will never say that they are black. Reason being is because of self-hatred. So we're going to show you a video of a sister that has been educating black people and people all over the world, on Instagram. So we like which knowledge is power. We know all of these things, but at the same time we'll have to give oxygen to others. So the Dominicans, them refuse to embrace their blackness. So I tell you about the dictator who murdered thousands of black people, to whiten his nation. Same thing them doing in Argentina. Them kill off the black people them there. Because them want to be white. White supremacy. The hatred of them implanted in black people's head. Some black people not all. Because Marcus Garvey is the one that teach us that black is beautiful and red is corruption. You understand? So, say Virgil. So in October 1937, that was 3 years before Marcus Garvey died. That single word, say Virgil, held the power of life and death. It could save your life, or it could end it in an instant. Imagine being handed a sprig or a sprig of parsley. Hold it, roll the Spanish R with a soft thrill sound, and you might walk away. But let the Creole P slip in or slip out too hard. Let that guttural R betray your origins, and soldiers were there to hope in your throat on the spot. In just 5 terrifying days, up to 30,000 people, mothers, babies, cane cutters, were hacked with machetes along the Dominican border. Also, one man could try to bleach his nation's skin. The twisted irony. The man harder in these brutal machetes. Raphael Trujillo carried Asian blood himself. This man was a black man. Welcome to the chilling story of a dictator so profoundly ashamed of his own black ancestry that he attempted to murder an entire memory of it, all to reshape his country identity. The origin of a monster. Raphael Trujillo was born 1891 in San Cristobal, a dusty market town that probably felt a million miles from the halls of power. His mother came from an Asian Dominican family, a common blend in the region, while his father was a small-time cattle dealer. Dark-skinned relatives filled their household, a reflection of the highlands' rich, complex heritage. Yet even here, the insidious Spanish colonial lessons that lighter skin meant better status was practically sprayed on every wall, an invisible but pervasive truth. Kids already knew to taunt Asian as a worst slur you could throw. Young Raphael, feeling the sting of these prejudices, answered by shining shoes, selling sweets, doing anything he could to buy soap and a second-hand uniform. His obsession with cleanliness, a desperate attempt to scrub away the perceived stain of his darker complexion, started right then and there. The boy, who would one day bathe 3 times a day, learned early that scrubbing, in his mind, could almost peel the brown away. A sad, futile attempt to wind himself from the outside in. This wasn't just a personal hygiene. It was about internalizing a deeply ingrained pigmentocracy, a social hierarchy where skin color determined worth, a legacy of the colonial caste system that valued European features above all else. The rise through the U.S. occupation, when the U.S. Marines occupied Haiti in 1916, they weren't just looking for warm bodies. They needed local troops who could read, follow orders without questions, and crucially wouldn't sympathize with the peasant rebels stirring up troubles. Trujillo, sharp and ambitious, fit the bill perfectly. Promotions came faster than a Caribbean Range Rover, corporal, captain, and swiftly commander of the National Guard. He was a quick study, meticulously observing the Marines' filing system, their clever payroll schemes, their intimidated nightsticks. By 1927, he wasn't just a commander, he was a chief of staff, quietly stockpiling rifles, meticulously photocopying blackmail files, and memorizing exactly who took which bribe. He was building an empire of information and influence. So when the Americans finally packed up and left in 1929, it wasn't a power vacuum they left. Trujillo already ran the only armed force that truly mattered. He had learned from the best, and he was ready to implement his own brand of control. Seizing the presidency, election year 1930 was a theater so absurd it could have been a dark sitcom. Except, of course, nobody was laughing. Trujillo's opponents didn't just withdraw, they disappeared or were intimidated after soldiers paid their homes very unwelcome visits. The result, he won every single precinct, with some heroes reported more ballots cast than actual residents. It was a farce, but a deadly serious one. Within months, the capital city, Santo Domingo, was reborn. Ciudad Trujillo, the national currency bore its turned face, and a new slogan blazed above the presidential palace: Dios y Trujillo, God and Trujillo, in that order. Congress, under its iron fist, voted him dictator for life, granting him a salary equal to the entire national education budget. Imagine that. Anyone who dare to joke about his famously thin mustache often vanished without a trace. The secret police, the dreaded SIM, kept chilling the detailed index cards on every citizen's racial pedigree, their sexual habits, and even how many times they publicly praised the benefactor. It was a regime built on fear, surveillance, and almost comical level of self-aggrandizement. Cult of whiteness. Trujillo's pain worship bordered not just on
You can argue, you can deflect, you can pull out your grandma's Spanish last name if you want to. But your ancestors came from the same boat that mine did. The same ports, the same plantation. You just got told to call it something else. So here's a history that y'all keep pretending that's not connected. But it is. Hispaniola, one island, two countries. Haiti on one side, the Dominican Republic on the other. France colonized one, Spain colonized the other. But both of them filled that land with enslaved Africans. That's not a theory, it's a ledger, a fact. It is factual. But when Haiti won its freedom in 1804, the first successful black republic, the world punished them. And the Dominican elite looked at that and said, oh hell no. We need to make sure they never lump us in with them. That's when the whitening started. Textbooks got rewritten, skin tones got renamed. Blackness became something to bury, not to honor. So if we fast forward to the 1930s, dictator Rafael Trujillo literally powdered his skin to look lighter. He banned African drums, outlawed Haitian-looking names, and murdered 20,000 Haitians in the Parsley Massacre because their blackness offended his fantasy of purity. And you know what's wild? Is that this man wasn't even white himself. He was just obsessed with being closer to it. So he made sure the generations of Dominicans learned to say I'm Indio instead of I'm black. And that lie worked so well that people still die on that hill today. Because you can bleach your skin, you can straighten your hair. You can say you're Spanish all day long, but our rhythm will always give you away. The drums, the hips, the food, the words, the bloodlines. That's Africa. Merengue, African rhythm. Bachata, African soul. And DNA studies already confirm what we've been saying for the longest. Most Dominicans are over 50% African descent. The denial doesn't come from not knowing. It comes from not wanting to admit that the same thing you were taught to hate is literally you. Anti-blackness in the DR didn't start with the Dominicans. It started with Europe. But it's been passed down generation after generation. It's why people can look in the mirror and see their black grandmother's face and still say, I'm not black, I'm Dominican. Like being black somehow cancels the rest of who you are. When really, it's the foundation of who you are. So yeah, Dominicans are black. They always have been. The only difference is Haiti had to fight for it, and the DR was taught to hide from it. But bloodlines don't lie. The rhythm doesn't lie. The mirror doesn't lie. The only lie that ever existed is that blackness is something to run from. And that's the one y'all are still trying to keep alive. Let it go. Jeez. Let's stop playing dumb.
But an outright delusion. He celebrated Columbus Day like it was Christmas. How the school children to belt out La Marcha Real, the Spanish national anthem, and confidently told diplomats that the Dominican Republic was the last European frontier in the Americas. But deep down he knew demographics mocked this fantasy. Most citizens carried the unmistakable texture of African hair. Resonant echoes of Yoruba drum beats in the very souls of the Dominican people. A solution, Blanque Imentionto, a desperate state sponsor attempt to widen the bloodline. European immigrants were suddenly offered free land. Arab traders, often lighter skin, were granted instant citizenship. Meanwhile, darker skinned Asian laborers, the indispensable engine of the sugar economy, became the official scapegoat for every single problems. Every crime, every economic downturn, every perceived drop in national self-esteem. This wasn't just about preference, it was a deliberate, calculated strategy to erase the African heritage that defined so much of the island, pushing a narrative of Hispanidad that denied the very visual reality of his own people. He understands deeply ingrained colonial idea that lighter equal better, and he weaponized it. This was a black man, you know. When we say black, not because I'm brown, you know, but in black. Hate him own self. So then you have the Parsley Massacre. By 1937, this anti-Asian fever had reached a boiling point. Fueled by Trujillo, relentless propaganda. He called his army chiefs together and coolly informed them that El Corte, the cutting, would cleanse the frontier. It began on October 2nd. Troops moved methodically from village to village, armed with U.S. supply Springfield rifles and machete brought from Cuba. Their killing methods were simple. Surround the BTS, the humble sugar workers, shocked at dawn. Dark-skinned residents, often indistinguishable from Dominicans, were herded to the riverbanks. Soldiers would then hold up a green sprig of parsley. Say, Virgil. They commanded. Asian Creole, unlike Spanish, lacked that alveolar tap for the heart. The sound emerged guttural, a telltale sign. Mispronounce it even slightly, and you will be forced face down into the massacre river. A machete to your neck, your body left for the crabs. Survivors remember the water. Yes, survivors remember the water turning rust red for miles downstream. One priest recounted the horrifying sight of 60 heads stacked like coconuts on his church steps, estimated of the dead range from a conservative 8,000 to a staggering 30,000 in just 5 days. Trujillo's government initially blamed overzealous locals, then in a grotesque display of control secretly paid $2 per severed hairs as proof to headquarters. It was a horrific act of ethnic cleansing, designed to solidify his vision of a whiter nation, no matter the cost in human. No matter the cost of the human lives. Aftermath and international shame. News of the massacre, though suppressed, eventually leaked out, carried by brave Asian journalists and horrified US missionaries. Haiti's president, understandably outraged, demand reparation. Trujillo's, always a showman after a face, saving sum of $75 per corpse, a pittance for such a profound loss. He had the money counted out in peso right on his decks as he casually smoked his cigars. The League of Nations, in a predictable display of impotence, clocked its disapproval, then quickly forgot. But back home, the dictator doubled down on his racial engineering. Spanish language newspapers were heavily subsidized to print elaborate genealogy, desperately linking every national hero to Iberian roots. School texts were rewritten, renaming the indigenous Taínos chiefs of Spanish allies, further erasing pre-colonial and African heritage. In a bizarre twist, the following year, 1938, he welcomed Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany, not out of humanitarian concern, but with a cynical hope that their lighter skin would mix with local women and accelerate his Blanca Imentio project. Most of these refugees, however, stayed exactly 5 years, just long enough to realize the island welcomed their pigment more than their lives. Before departing for the relative safety of New York, it was a stark example of Trujillo's cold, calculating approach to race, viewing people as genetic material rather than human beings. The massacre didn't just kill people, it cemented Trujillo's twisted psychology. Race, he believed, was clay, and he was the sculpture. For the next 24 years, every policy, every decree nudged Dominicans further and further away from their African heritage. Census forms were instance drop black as an option. Instead, you choose Indio, or Chigino, wheat colored, term designed to obscure African ancestry and create a distinctly Dominican non-black racial identity, directly echoing the colonial caste system fluidity that allow for distancing from Negro. Police even carry color swatches darker than a cafe con leche, that means milk, and could find citizens who are misrepresenting their ethnicity. A chilling example of state-sanctioned colorism. Meanwhile, the sim is pervasive. Secret police flame hotel rooms, shot students who dare to write poem about liberty, and once incredibly arrested a man for yawning during a presidential speech. The regime control wasn't just racial, it was absolute. By 1960, Trujillo family held property worth half the national budget. Salt plants, milk factories, even brothels. His grip was total on his vision of a whiter Dominican Republic. However, artificial was relentlessly enforced. On the night when he was killed, conspirators, some of his own bodyguards, men who served him for years, them Ridley Chevrolet with 40 bullets on a lonely coastal highway. But even the most absolute power has its limits. Hubris, the classic downfall of dictators, finally outran him. In 1961, he made a fatal miscalculation, attempting to assassinate Venezuela's president. The Organization of American States finally rose to action, imposed sanctions. On the night of May 30th, conspirators, some of his own bodyguards, men who had served him for years, riddled a Chevrolet with 40 bullets on a lonely coastal highway. The dictator's corpse was so bullet-bloated and mangled that the undertaker had to use a size 48 suit to make him presentable. Crowds, though still terrified, quietly celebrated. Yet the fear of Trujillo had instilled lingered like a dark cloud. Some elders still crossed themselves and whispered, "Trujillo sees," long after his death, a testament to the psychological scars he left behind. Rafael Trujillo ruled for 31 years, murdered estimated 50,000 people, and left behind a nation trained to fear its own reflection. What about it today? And elders still lower their voice when they say, "Trujillo," half joking, half pleading, and a word, a grim reminder of a brutal past. The massacre severed families, split an island, and encoded anti-blackness so deep into the national psyche that many Dominicans will still tell you today, "I am not black, I am a Dominican." It's a phrase that encapsulated the historical denial, as if two identities are mutually exclusive, a direct consequence of Trujillo's force, blanqueamiento, and a long-standing opposition to Haitian identity rooted in the Haitian Revolution. This persistent narrative, where blackness became synonymous with Haitianness, continues to create complex identity struggle, especially for Afro-Dominicans who find their heritage challenged both at home and abroad. Yet, despite the sharpest blades of historical oppression, the African drum persists. You hear it in the rhythm of merengue, taste it in the food, feel it in the very cadence of speech. Memory like hair grows back even after the most brutal cutting. If history offers a warning here, perhaps it's this: when a leader asks you to trade your neighbor's blood for your own self-worth, to deny a part of who you are for a fabricated ideal, pretty soon nobody remembers who started it under the river that ran red. So the next time someone hands you a sprig of parsley, remember the word that cost thousands their lives, and ask yourself what voices we still silence, what parts of ourselves we still deny to keep our mirror polished and our preferred narratives intact. So now we go to Donald Trump. Now fast forward to November 2024. During the presidential election, majority of these people are from Dominican Republic, Cuba, Venezuela, and other countries, Argentina, who think that they are white. So they're voted for Donald Trump, and they have songs out there in which they praise Donald Trump for his rhetoric and his narrative of hating others who are not white. But he did not tell the Spanish people that they are not white, because that's Donald Trump. So the illusion of whiteness, a Dominican reckoning in Trump's America. In the United States, particularly under Donald Trump's presidency, the illusion of racial hierarchy that many Dominicans once clung to was brutally exposed. For generations, some Dominicans internalized the colonial lie that proximity to whiteness offers safety, privilege, and respect. They believe that by denying their African roots and identity with their Hispanic heritage, they could escape the social and racial stigma attached to blackness. But America, the great equalizer and the great exposer, remind them otherwise. In Trump's America, where nationalism often disguised itself as patriotism, and whiteness became an unspoken badge of belonging. So in Trump's America, whiteness became an unspoken badge of belonging. Dominicans quickly realized that they were not a part of that privileged circle. No amount of fluent English, straightened-haired, or lightened skin could erase how society truly saw them. They were not seen as whites, but as people of color, as black people. And for many, that realization was devastating. Oh, the high street them like worse than dogs. The same Dominicans who once echoed racist tropes about Asians or denied their own African ancestry found themselves on the receiving end of discrimination, suspicion, and prejudice. They were stopped, searched, profiled just like African Americans. They were paid less for the same work, overlooked in corporate spaces, and targeted by immigration policies that never cared about their Spanish surnames. In the eyes of the system, they were not Hispanic whites. They were brown, they were black, they were the other. And it's like calling themselves white Hispanic is like calling rain wet rain. Yeah, so the same Dominicans who once echo racist tropes about Asians or deny their own African ancestry found themselves on the receiving end of racism in America. They paid less for the same work, overlooked in corporate spaces, and targeted by immigration policies that never cared about their Spanish surnames. In the eyes of the system, they were not white. They were brown, they were black, they were the other. It was a painful awakening, a mirror held up for centuries of denial. Trump's America exposed fragility of racial self-deception, which reminds those Dominicans who refused to embrace their blackness that no amount of denial could buy acceptance from a society built on preservation of whiteness. It revealed that their struggle was not one of nationality, but of identity, and that their true power lay not in pretending to be something they are not, but in embracing who they truly are. To be Dominican is to be the child of Africa, Europe, and the Taínos. Not a counterfeit white, but a symbol of resilience, born from diversity. This tragedy is not that Dominicans are black, but that so many have been taught to see the truth as shame instead of strength. We as black people must be proud of who they are, because remember, God said that He has made man in His own image and likeness. So if you are born black, that's the way that God wanted you to be. To the Dominican who think that they are white because of they are close to whiteness, you are not white. The Hispanics are not white. The Italians are not white. The Irish are not white. And it's the same history that imparted to us by the Europeans. But the only race of people from Europe that still have this moniker as being black is the Hispanic, because the blacks, the Moors from Africa, were living with them for over 700 years. To be a Dominican is to be a child of Africa. The tragedy is not the Dominicans are black, but that so many have been taught to see that truth as shame instead of strength. Until they confront that truth, they will continue to live in a psychological exile, rejected by whiteness they idolize and disconnected from blackness they deny. So they are living in this world where no one really embrace them. Black people don't embrace them, and white people don't want anything to do with them. So these are people who are by themselves. Until they confront that truth, they will continue to live in a psychological exile, rejected by whiteness. Donald Trump didn't change who they are. He simply reminded them who they have always been. A proud mixed people still struggling to heal from centuries of colonial conditioning. No matter how amount of changing their names from Spanish name to English name, there's a unique look about the Spanish people, but they don't want to accept it. They are different from the Europeans. Just like the Arabs. The Arabs want to be white, but their big noses just give them away. Have yourself a beautiful day.